Picking up from the previous tutorial, where we prepared our tracks by looking at track considerations, in this tutorial I am going to look at audio transitions. They do work in a similar way to video transitions, but as I said previously, I do think it's worth going over it here, if for nothing else a sense of completeness. And anyway, along the way, I'll show you a couple of things that you don't do with a video track. Right then, you'll remember from an earlier tutorial, we added in this transition, this audio transition, and very similar to the video transition, if you select it and then come over here to the Effect Controls panel, then you'll see some further information here. You'll see the duration of this transition is set here, and then just underneath, in the alignment area, click on this drop reveal, whereby you'll see these 4 separate categories. Center at cut, start at cut, end at cut, and the one that we've got checked with the bullet point, custom start. As I say, because that's the one we are using at the moment, custom start, that's got the bullet point, but if you want to choose a different one, then of course we would choose appropriately. We'll get back to this in a second, only because I want to show you down on the timeline. Remember this with the video, if you right click on a transition, once it is selected, then you'll see a couple of options. In this case, we can set our transition duration here, or we could clear it. I'll click to set the transition duration, and there you'll see the existing timing for it. If I want to change it to 2 seconds, for example, then I can do, simply by typing in 2 seconds there, and I'll OK it. And there you go, as we would expect, the ranged area on the audio transition is now slightly wider, because it is now covering more of this audio, 2 seconds to be precise. And in fact, if we come back over to our effect controls, there we see the duration has been updated, as we would expect. 2 seconds. A quick way of deleting a transition, as we know, is to select it and then hitting delete on our keyboard. But also remember what we've just seen. I'll come back over to the transition and right click on it once it is selected, and there you'll see the second option, clear. We could choose this method if we prefer. Now I don't actually really want to delete it, so I'm going to bring it back. I'll use the shortcut, Ctrl+Z, and there we go. We now revert back to where we were. Now even though we've got a 2 second duration, the transition isn't centrally located between the 2 clips, and that's why we saw the custom option earlier. If I want to change this again, left click on it, somewhere in the middle, and then drag to reposition to your satisfaction. And now if I come back over to the effect controls, because I have manually moved this once more, well, we are still set to custom, but if I do want to change it to one of these presets, center at cut, start at cut, or end at cut, then simply choose appropriately. Notice in our view just to the right that as soon as I do choose one of these options, then the graphical representation will update to illustrate this. For example, with center at cut, we now get an equal distance between both sides of our transition. Of course, we also see it down on our timeline. Now just so it's a little bit more manageable at this screen size, I'm going to reduce our second clip in terms of its length. I'll left click at the end and trim a little bit away. Alternatively, if you want to use the razor tool or the cut tool, call it what you will, select it there on your tools panel, then we can come over to our clip and then cut wherever we feel necessary. Here's fine for this example. Okay, now I actually want to remove the second part there, so I'll select it and hit delete on my keyboard. I'm only doing this as I referred to before, simply because of the screen sizes that we have to work to when we are creating these courses for you. I want to make a little bit more room at the end here to bring another clip in with its embedded audio. So I'll come over to my project panel, making sure I'm in my video bin. I'll select one of these at random. I'm not too concerned which one it is. This one's fine. So I'll drag it over and drop it here, right at the end of our second clip. Okay, now I'll just zoom slightly. And because the purpose of this tutorial is audio transitions really, I'm going to left click on our clip and drag to the left until it butts up against the audio from the previous clip. So now I'll be able to bring in a new audio transition between those 2 clips. Now just out of interest, remember how we saw this earlier, creating this fade in? Well, with this point I made, if I want to move it, simply left click on it and drag it to a new position. Okay, let's look at what we've got in terms of audio transitions. Our first one, the one we've got in place already, the one indicated as constant power, well this is the default out of the 3 audio transitions available. But if I wanted to change it, come over to your effects panel, open up your audio transitions folder, and there you'll see inside the only subcategory, crossfade, and as I say, constant power is our default, and we know that now, don't we, by the fact that the square just to the left takes on that different colour for its border. I'm not sure if that's a yellow or an orange, but that indicates that this is the default. If you want to use a shortcut and bring in the default, wherever your CTI is between two clips, if you click Ctrl+D or Command+D, you'll instantly bring in that particular transition, the default transition. Anyway, let's look at changing our constant power. I'll change it to constant gain, left click and drag and drop over the top there. Once more, like a video transition, this doesn't combine them, it replaces them. If I want to choose my third one, it's the same process, left click and replace, just like that. Okay, I'll leave that one as it is, but for the new clip that we've brought in, let's choose constant power, and I'll drag that and implement this in between our two audio tracks there. I'll just zoom in a little bit more. Okay, now something to bear in mind. We've got an equal or constant power transition between our two clips, and you shouldn't notice any disparity in volume as the transition takes place, so long as the audio has been recorded equally and you've got both clips set to 0 dB, i.e. optimum level. It might well be that you've not. For example, you might have inadvertently, or perhaps done it on purpose, but you might have attenuated or decreased the volume by left-clicking on the horizontal line here, the volume line, and dragging it down. Or quite possibly you might have amplified the volume if the signal isn't very loud. I'm going to take it back roughly to where it was, just about at 0 dB. I'm hardly amplifying the sound there. But as I say, to reiterate, if you've got two clips that were recorded at the same time, it's very likely that the volume levels will be equal anyway. So do bear that in mind. If you are changing the volume level between one clip and another, then the transition between the two might not seem quite as natural as you might expect. And also, with this in mind, you might have some audio recorded, in this case just the sound of nature, the sea and the sky and the birds, etc. on this beach, but just occasionally the silence was broken by a dog barking in the distance. Well, that's fine in some respects, but if you don't want it, you might want to dip the volume or attenuate the volume momentarily. Well, you can do, simply by clicking on your audio line across here, your audio level line, and you'll get what are known as pinpoints or keyframes. If you've not got your pen tool selected, you'll probably need to select it, and then you can add some in wherever you feel necessary. And now you can either drag them up or down so that you can control any problematic fluctuations with the audio, or even, as we've just suggested, dip the volume momentarily when there's a problem with the audio. Okay, now I'm going to finish up here, now that we've looked at audio transitions, and also looked at adding in some key points so that we can modify our audio. So, as I say, we will finish up here, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.